Okay, so I wanted to do some practice problems uh, in a video for you this weekend because we're going to need to make sure that our chain rule skills are good and the implicit differentiation rules. So you want to make sure that you're ready for next week because in order to do the problems that we're going to be doing with related rates, you need to be able to do implicit differentiation. And in order to do implicit differentiation, you need to know how to apply the chain rule. So I'm talking, but I'm also kind of giving you an opportunity to look over these questions. We've got a total of 6 or 7 questions here, and this video is essentially going to show you how to work these 7 problems. So it might even be good. My idea is that you will pause the video, try to find the derivative of each of these, and then check your work. And so you can scroll through, play back the video and, go to the page which has the answer, check to see if your answer is correct. And, if it's incorrect, you can look and see how I did it. And there we go. Okay, so let's get started. This is our first problem. Here's f of x equals 4x minus x squared, quantity to the 100th power. And here's what we're going to do. Now, I'm going to put the chain rule. I'm going to write the chain rule just as a reminder over here. This is our chain rule. So the chain rule states how to take the derivative when you have the composition of 2 functions. So if we've got a function, say big F of x is equal to little f of g of x. So let's put here if this is a case, then f prime of x, which is the same thing as f of g of x, all of that prime, is equal to, and here's our formula, f prime of g of x times g prime of x. Okay, so here our outer function is f of x, little f of x. Outer function is little f of x, and our inner function is g of x. Okay. So I'm going to essentially try to follow this. Oh, okay, that didn't go well. I'm going to try to follow this when I'm doing all the problems here. There we go. Okay. So my first goal here is I've got to figure out my outer function and my inner function. So I'm going to say my outer function, my outer is x to the 100. My inner function is 4x minus x squared. Okay, so what this means is, looking over here, my outer is f of x. So to apply my formula, I'm going to have f of x equals x to the 100. G of x, which is my inner, is equal to 4x minus x squared. Now, I need to find f prime of x. What is that going to be? If f of x is 100, I'm using the power rule to say f prime of x is 100 x to the 99. And I also need the formula for g prime of x. So g of x is 4x minus x squared. So g prime of x is 4 minus 2x. Okay. And now I'm putting it all together. And I need f prime of g of x times g prime of x. Now, f prime of g of x, I look here, this is my f prime of x. So f prime of g of x is going to be 100 times g of x to the 99th power, right? But now what is g of x? I go back here. G of x is 4x minus x squared. So this is going to be 100 times 4x minus x squared to the 99th power. Okay, so let's put this here. So my f prime of g of x times g prime of x. So I've got 100 4x minus x squared quantity to the 99th power times 4 minus 2x. 4 minus 2x. 4 minus 2x. Okay, and so typically, so actually that's a good way to write our answer. So let's put in blue here our final answer, which is that f prime of x is equal to, and I'm going to kind of switch it around, 100 4x minus, 4 minus 2x times 4x minus x squared to the power of 99. Put a little rectangle around it. So this is our final answer. Okay, let's move to the second one. Now for the second one, I need, again, let's see, we've got our chain rule. So let me see if I can try to copy, and paste. Okay, so I've got my chain rule, good. Now, I need to figure out my outer function. So this is y equals e to the negative 2t cosine 4t. Actually, instead of just applying the chain rule, before we apply the chain rule, we need to first use the product rule. So the product rule says if you've got f of x times g of x is equal to big F of x, then f prime of x, which is f of x times g of x, all of that, the derivative of that, is going to be equal to f prime of x times g of x plus g prime of x times f of x. So, let's see here. This is another one that we'll need. Okay, that's fine, even though it's cutting into the f. So now here, let's look here. This is going to be my f of x. So let's write down here. So f of, now notice actually, we don't have, x is not our independent variable. Our independent variable here is t. So I'll just put f of t equals e to the negative 2t. And then g of t is going to be cosine of 4t. Okay. So g of t is equal to cosine of 4t. Now, in order to use the product rule, I need to have f prime, I need to have g, I need g prime, and I need f. So I already have f and I have g, so I need f prime, and I'm going to need g prime of t. And then once I have these four, right, f, g, f prime, and g prime, I'll be able to use the product rule and come up with my answer. Now, let's figure out f prime. So here we are. So to figure out f prime of t, that's what we're doing here. So we're saying if f of t is equal to e to the negative 2t, then we need to use the chain rule. So we need our outer function and our inner function. And what I'm going to do, just to make my life easier, is I'm going to rewrite this as big F of t. Okay? And so the reason why is because I'm going to use little f and little g for my formula over here. So my inner function is, my outer function is just e to the t, and my inner function is negative 2t. Okay. So this means f of, now again, we're following up here. We're following our formula over here where our outer is f and our inner is g. This is what we're following. Outer is f, inner is g. So I've got my little f of t equals e to the t, that's my outer, and my inner, g of t, equals negative 2t. So I need f prime of t. No, f of t is equal to e to the t. What is f prime of t? E to the t. This is from our formulas for our basic derivatives. And g prime of t is going to be equal to negative 2. So I'm going to put all of this together and say that my f prime of t is going to be equal to little f prime of g of t times g prime of t. Now, I've got g prime of t is equal to negative 2, so I can just put that in here right now. Negative 2 times my f prime of g of t. Okay, what is f prime? I've got f prime is equal to e to the t. So f prime of g of t will be e to the g of t. Okay, and again, this is times negative 2. So we can rewrite this as negative 2 e to the g of t. But now what is g? I go back here, and my g is right here. G of t is negative 2t. So this is going to end up being negative 2 e to the negative 2t. So this is the derivative of f prime of t is going to equal negative 2 e to the negative 2t. Okay, so back up here, remember we were just using, we just switched it. The derivative of this e to the negative 2t is going to be negative, in fact, we can erase this, negative 2 e to the negative 2t. Now we're going to do essentially, we'll need to do essentially the same thing for our g. Because we need to find the derivative, right? We need to find the derivative of cosine of 4t. So just so I can kind of keep this all on the same page, I'm going to erase. So I'm going to erase this. So what do we want to figure out? We want to figure out the derivative of cosine of 4t. So cosine of 4t prime. Okay, so here's how we figured out. Now, a lot of students, again, just remember that it's not cosine times 4t, right? And so students were saying sine, negative sine, and then times 4, or something like that. That's not how to find the derivative. In order to figure out the derivative of cosine of 4t, we need to use the chain rule. Okay, so what is our outer? Our outer function is going to be cosine of t, and our inner function is going to be 4t. Okay, so let's see here. So we've got f of t. Remember, I'm using this f right here. It's not the same as the f up here, but I'm just doing it so that I can follow the chain rule here. So my f of t is the outer, which is cosine t. My g of t is the inner, which is 4t. F prime of t is equal to negative sine t, and g prime of t is equal to 4. So I use the power rule to find g prime of t. So I use the power rule to find g prime of t. And I just use my trig derivative formulas to find the derivative of cosine of t. So those trig derivatives should be memorized by now. And now I'm going to combine it. So I need cosine of 4t. The derivative of it is going to equal f prime of g of t times g prime of t. Now my g prime of t is 4. So I can go ahead and put that over here. So I've got 4 times f prime of g of t. My f prime of t is negative sine t. So if f prime of t is negative sine t, then f prime of g of t is going to be negative sine g of t. Okay, times 4. Now I need to say, what is g of t? G of t is 4t. So I substitute in 4t for my g of t. So I've got negative sine 4t, and then I've still got this times 4. So we can rewrite this as negative 4 sine 4t. So our derivative of cosine of 4t is going to be negative 4 sine 4t. Okay. So now I found the derivative. So let's see here. So now I found the derivative of my first product, right? So that goes right here. So I've got that derivative. And I found the derivative of my second product, right? So the derivative of cosine 4t, I've got right here. And I'm ready to combine them, right? So in order to combine them, let's see, I guess I can erase again. Let's erase. Now I'm going to use the product rule to say that y prime is going to be f of t, g prime of t, plus f prime of t, g of t. Okay, and what is f of t? E to the negative 2t. So that's right here. Now g prime of t is right here, so times negative 4 sine 4t, plus I need f prime of t, negative 2 sine 4t, times g of t, which is cosine 4t. Okay, so let's see if we can kind of rewrite this better, simplify some stuff. So I'll have e to the negative 2t times negative 4 times sine 4t. So I'm going to write that as negative 4 e to the negative 2t sine 4t. Okay. And now I've got minus 2 sine 4t cosine 4t. So minus 2 sine 4t cosine 4t. And so if I wanted to, I could simplify this and pull out a negative 2 let's see here. Wait, f prime. I think I made a mistake up here. So my f prime, so my f prime, let's see here, so I need f. So for f, e to the negative 2, that's correct. G prime, negative 4 sine 4t, that's correct. F prime, what is my f prime? F prime is negative 2 e to the negative 2t. So let me need to erase that. negative 2 e to the negative 2t. And then my g is cosine of 4t. Okay. So, putting it all together, I should have negative 4 e to the negative 2t sine 4t minus 2 e to the negative 2t cosine 4t. And now I can pull out the factor of e to the negative 2t and a factor of negative 2. So I have negative 2 e to the negative 2t times 2 sine 4t plus cosine 4t. Okay, so that is it. Okay, so let's move on to our third one. Okay,